What's going on, guys? This is Techricity and you're watching the Gionee Marathon M5 Plus review. Like the rest of Gionee's Marathon series, this is a battery-centric phone with a whopping 5020 mAh capacity that sets it apart from the crowd. Surprisingly, the M5 Plus has a lower capacity than the M5, so what's the plus? Well, I've been using the M5 Plus for a month and it's a better phone overall. Here's why. Love it or hate it, this phone is big. I'm talking barely fits in your car's holder big, or another phone fits in the display big. You get the point, it's big. It has a 6-inch display and it's 160mm tall. Well, that means it's going to properly fit in very few jean pockets and your hand will get good at acrobatics. It has its own positives like more text at a glance and a more immersive video and gaming experience. Also on the front is a fingerprint sensor. It's fast, but not the fastest on the market, while the accuracy is on par. The capacitive buttons here are not backlit, they're just really shiny and reflective. Also, there's a new logo on the metallic back along with the camera, flash, and speaker. The phone looks good overall, but is a bit generic if you ask me. Usually, you'd expect a phone with this whale of a battery to be thick, but it's not. It's 8.4mm thick, and that's thinner than the Nexus 6, another 6-incher. Hell, it's thinner than the new HTC 10. What's even better is that all around the phone there's a metallic rim that is significantly thinner than the rest of the phone, and since this is the frame that you're going to be holding, it tricks your hand into feeling thinner than it actually is. This is also where the dual SIM and microSD trays can be found. All things considered, when you're holding the M5 Plus, it doesn't feel cheap. It feels like you're holding something top tier in your hand, or hands, because let's be honest, you're two-handing this thing. Going back to the display, it's a 1080p Super AMOLED display. The display is very good, but not among the best. The AMOLED screen means that colors are great, they pop. However, when you're tilting it, there is some slight color shift, mainly in the whites. The display looks good outdoors too, which is always a plus. Also, Full HD on a 6-inch phone isn't the sharpest combination. Don't get me wrong, it's pretty sharp, just not as sharp as we've grown accustomed to in high-end phones. This shouldn't pose a problem to most people. Gionee is saying that this phone has a water drop display, and that is a gimmick term which basically means it has 2.5D glass, or a slight curve at the edges. It feels good when swiping in from the corners, but that's about it for functionality. Like I said, the display is good. The speaker on the back is great, minus the rear placement. It gets very loud and sounds good. As usual, don't be fooled by the big grille, the speaker is only on the left. Speaking of speakers, the front earpiece make calls sound great. The phone gets good reception and even supports 4G voice over LTE. Storage isn't a problem at all, 64GB included, coupled with microSD expansion up to 128GB, plenty of space for everything. The phone has 3GB of RAM, out of which 1.3GB is usually free, and that paired with the 64-bit MediaTek 6753 and Mali T720 is probably the biggest letdown of this phone. Everyday basic tasks are smooth, multitasking is usually smooth, but during intensive tasks, especially gaming, there's gonna be some hiccups. Benchmark scores are not good, and the performance really gets on your nerves while playing something heavy like Asphalt 8. I play all my games with graphics set to the max, and here Asphalt 8 just isn't playable, and that's bad news. Although most other heavy games like Dead Trigger 2 or Need for Speed ran without issues, games like Asphalt 8 and Sniper 3D had some problems. Little games are fantastic, but that's a given nowadays. For someone that plans on playing heavy games, this might not be the phone for you. Games that do run well, like Dead Trigger 2, are extremely fun to play on this big 6-inch screen, but like I said, the M5 Plus just doesn't cut it in the performance department. I know this phone is marketed for its battery and not its performance, but the competition at this price rips benchmarks to shreds. But hey, it doesn't overheat, at least. Again, casual user, no problem. Heavy gamer, some problem. The M5 Plus is running Android 5.1 Lollipop, running Gionee's own Amigo 3.1, and unlike its offline service, Gionee isn't very well known for providing software updates. Personally, I think the UI doesn't look very good overall, but it has some cool and useful software features like this control center knockoff, the Chameleon app which themes your phone according to the colors of your surroundings, the System Manager app which is pretty neat, a theme app, a wallpaper app, etc. However, out of the box, this phone is filled up to the brim with bloatware, most of which can be easily removed. The stock apps are pretty and designed well. A software feature I really liked was when you plug your earphones in, it lets you choose between certain sound templates. It also gives you access to an equalizer, so you're getting exactly what you want out of the headphone jack. The output is pretty good. Also, it looks like they partnered with DTS to make some of this happen, so more brownie points here. The camera app has some fun features and a couple filters. And even though Amigo seems to be more polished than before, the M5 Plus still managed to freeze and crash on me, although this was incredibly rare. Software is a good package overall, let's just hope Gionee keeps their word and updates the phone. The UI isn't the best looker, but the theme store has tons of themes, and it's Android, so do looks really matter? The M5 Plus sports a 13 megapixel rear camera and a 5 megapixel front camera, which works well, nothing much to say here. The rear camera, however, is a mixed bag. I use it a lot indoors and in daylight, and the photos on your screen right now are unedited from the camera. In good artificial light, the photos came out great with accurate color and detail. Regular indoor photos, though, leads to grain and bad photos in general. Photos taken in ample sunlight turn out pretty good, no major problems, again good color, sharp and lots of details. However, in some lighting conditions, especially in bright sunlight, I'm talking directly in the sun's line of fire at noon, the camera let me down. These weren't the best pictures, they were over sharpened and sometimes the colors were slightly off, usually a lot warmer than they should be, sometimes washed out and faded, but the pictures were okay, not terrible. Obviously, some photos in this condition can turn out great, but usually you need to be very careful taking photos in this scenario. A good photo on this camera is only guaranteed in limited lighting conditions. Also, it isn't the fastest camera out there by any means. f2.2 gives a decent depth of field, it's satisfactory, and at night, you probably guessed it, the photos are not good, although night mode helps a little. Overall, I had to say that photos meet expectations. I mean, it's not going to disappoint you, but it sure as hell isn't going to impress you, especially in 2016. It's an average camera. Video tops out at 1080p, and again, it's okay, but a notch below satisfactory. Colors keep shifting, it takes a while, and struggles to maintain focus. It reminds me of Android cameras from a few years ago. It takes good video, again, under very limited conditions like this, good light and not a lot of movement. Generally, you're getting okay video and sometimes bad video out of this camera. There isn't OIS, but I put software stabilization to the test on an Indian road and it did pretty well, I was surprised. The most descriptive and encompassing word I can use to describe camera performance is mid-range. Coming to the battery, what you're most probably buying this phone for, it will blow your mind. If you buy this phone, you will not worry about charging your phone when you leave the house. You will get 1.5 to 2 day battery life. When I monitored a charge from 100% to 1%, these are the stats I got. With moderate to heavy usage, I got 8 hours of screen on time over a span of nearly 2 days on a single charge. Those are some pretty good numbers. Even with extreme heavy use, you will get almost a full 24 hours out of this battery, and I can't say that about most phones on the market. This isn't even using the power saving modes. Imagine how long you can drag the battery out if you turn those on. Gionee also says that the M5 Plus retains 90% of its original capacity after 600 charge cycles, or roughly 2 years, and that is pretty cool. This phone justifies its name, Marathon. They say it supports fast charging, and although I don't know much about that, it went from 0 to 100 in about 3 hours and 20 minutes with the included charger. At the end of the day, this is a good phone, and like I said at the start of the video, it's a battery-centric phone. It's a good looker, feels top tier, has a decent camera, battery life that is ahead of almost all the competition, and it struggles with a few heavy games. Seriously, that is a major letdown in an otherwise great phone. That pretty much is what it boils down to. If you're looking for a powerhouse phone to tear up the benchmarks, then it's a no-brainer. Do not buy this. If you're someone who prioritizes battery life, one of the core issues in today's smartphones, it's another no-brainer. Buy it without a second thought. If you're in limbo, it boils down to how much the M5 Plus costs. At its current price, it's slightly above what you might want to pay for it. The price more than justifies the battery, build, and screen, but does not justify the mid-range performance and camera. That means at its current price, I would suggest looking elsewhere. Unless you can snag some sort of discount or wait a little bit until the prices get slashed, they eventually will. Thanks for watching this video, I'll catch you next time when I'm done donating my power banks to the less privileged. Peace.